been in a long time. So the point is, I'm going to try and explain a little bit about electric melting and the future and cover things that I think you need to know. Why won't that go down? For those of you who don't know, we're part of the Glass Service Group, which about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, joined the CEFPRO group. So we're part of CEFPRO now. I'm going to give a brief introduction, look at electric boost and electric melting, look briefly at electricity and cover the future. The role of electric melting is quite long. We've been doing this for a long time. Conventional melting started when we allegedly by the Phoenicians on a beach sitting on blocks of soda ash around a fire. But since then, however it was formed, we've basically been using some form of heat to melt raw materials. And we've progressed from wood to charcoal, from charcoal to coal, from coal to gasify the coal, from coal to heavy oil because nobody else wanted to buy that, natural gas, and eventually now that is conventional melting. Somewhere along the line in the mid-1800s, electric boost was started to be looked at. And that might surprise people, but it was around the mid-1800s. And then I'll also look at why we moved to electric melting. If we look at this graph, you can see that from about 1920 to the current time, we've progressively improved the efficiency of furnaces. This graph covers German furnaces from the mid-1920s, but we've plateaued at around about 3.6 gigajoules, 3.4 gigajoules per ton. If we look at this graph, we can see here the different furnace types and their efficiency. And what's very clear from this graph is that the bigger the furnace, the more efficient it becomes. And one of the reasons for that is that there is a certain amount of holding heat required, and the rest of it is melting heat. So from this, you can see that end-fired furnaces are generally the most efficient. They're typically used for container furnaces. Cross-fired furnaces are a little bit less efficient, mainly because they've got bigger regenerators. Typically, they're for float. The oxy-fired furnaces, which are the round red dots, look very good. But when we correct for the electricity being used to produce the oxygen, then those red dots become, or orange dots become orange dots. So they're not quite as good as they are. What's missing on this graph, and I've obviously picked the one, is that there are some electric furnaces which are way down by those red dots, those red circles, which is very surprising. But here on this graph, you can see here very clearly that if we look at the blue line, this is a fuel-fired furnace, gas-fired. Generally speaking, the efficiency of that furnace only gets to a good number, somewhere around 45%, when we get to the bigger pulls for the furnace. If, on the other hand, we look at the green curve, this is an all-electric furnace, and here, when we get to 250 tons, we were at 80% fuel efficiency. So this is one of the main drivers why people look at electric furnace. And you might ask, well, why aren't there hundreds of them? And I will cover that in a minute. It won't move down. Why won't it move down? Come on. Okay. So short history. As I said, mid-1800s, boost was being played around with in very, very crude furnaces, generally using charcoal and some gas. In 1905, Sauvageon from France had a patent for an electric furnace, but it wasn't really until 1928 that Borel and particularly Cornelius in Sweden had a patent which generally became the Cornelius furnaces, the electric furnaces from the 1928 through to the late 1950s, early 1960s. And there, a guy called Larry Penberthy, working for Northwestern Glass in Washington State, in northwestern USA, suddenly realized that molybdenum, which had been used during the war to improve steel and other war efforts, could be used as an electrode. And he experimented with this and found out that, yes, pure molybdenum was indeed an electrode which, unlike using graphite or iron, would not colour the glass and would not dissolve in the glass. And following on from Larry Penberthy, we then picked three of the probably more significant people in the industry. Pam Gell, an Englishman that jumped onto electrodes fairly quickly. Fred Scarf, who pioneered lead crystal glass for electric melting for lead crystal glass and was a very smart man. And Professor Stanek of the Czechoslovakia, now Czech Republic, who did a lot of work both in industry and academic from his university in pushing the envelope for understanding of electric furnaces and electric melting. So, what are electric furnaces? Well, they are vertical melters with three layers: a batch layer, a reaction layer, and a fining and reheating. So batch is spread across the surface and it seals in the heat. Molybdenum electrodes are resistance heaters. They are using Julian heat. In other words, they become hot rods. Those of you with a physics bent might well be a bit puzzled here, because glass is a very good insulator and used on electricity pylons. But that's true. It's an exceptionally good insulator when it's cold, but when it's hot and liquid, it is in fact a conductor. So melting takes place under the batch blanket, and that's the reaction layer. Any volatile components which would normally be lost, and typically in most soda lime glasses that would be sodium sulfate used for refining, and perhaps a little bit of the soda ash. These condense in the blanket, and this is particularly useful when you come to some of the other glasses, such as opal glasses with fluorine, borosilicate glasses, and some other glasses, because those elements which are lost due to volatilization are very strong pollutants, and having to correct the batch for the losses that would be from would normally be case with volatiles is very difficult to do. You're chasing your tail. So having most of them condensed in the blanket is a huge advantage. And then fining and refining takes place underneath the reaction layer before the glass goes through to the distributor for forming. So the advantages of electric melting is that they are very energy efficient, as I showed on one of the earlier graphs. There are virtually no emissions, so there is no chimney, which means people don't often complain about the black smoke or even the white smoke coming out of chimneys. As I've said, it eliminates the volatiles. It's a much lower investment cost because there are no regenerators, and there is also generally no superstructure soaking up heat from flames. As a consequence, there is less maintenance. It's generally reckoned that you get higher quality glass, and there are smaller repair costs because there's lower capital cost, and the downtime is considerably shorter for the repair. Yes, there are a few disadvantages. There is less pull flexibility for a cold top furnace, the one I've described. When we have a conventional furnace with flames on the top, we can go from zero pull to maximum pull at any time we like. We just have to vary the amount of raw material being put in and the quantity of heat. But because we have a blanket sealing the surface, we can't do that easily in an all-electric melter. So generally, If you design the furnace for X tons, you can normally only pull half of X in normal operation, anywhere from half X to full X. There is a shorter furnace lifetime. Typically, a float furnace conventionally might last 20 years. Container furnace might last 15 or 16. Electric furnaces are currently only doing about 8 years. Now, I don't happen to think that's a disadvantage. I think one of the problems that we've got in the industry is that if we build a furnace for 16 or 18 years, we lock ourselves out of new technology for that period of time. And more importantly, we have no idea what the market is going to be that far ahead. So having shorter life, giving us chance to look at our market and look at our investment and catch up with technology, I think is in a big advantage going forward. Currently, there's less experience of the operators because the method of operation is different. Depending upon the availability of the electricity, you could have stability issues. At the present moment, because we want to seal the surface off, we're limited to the amount of pure cullet we're trying to use. And with decarbonisation and the circular economy, we're now trying to use much more. There is generally, with cold top electric furnaces, a different size and aspect ratio. So how we fit that into an existing operation is a problem. And then there is limited experience with producing coloured glass. Now, I've put this in because some people believe that is the case. I have melted reduced glasses, amber glass, which is reduced, in an electric furnace. And there are many people that have. And all we do is to change from a cold top to a semi-hot top. But I won't go into that just yet. So here are some pictures of various electric melters from different suppliers. Sorg of Germany, Horn of Germany, Tico and Five. The Sorg and Five favour hexagon and duodecagonal furnaces. Tico favour generally rectangular, and Horn use both depending upon what they're doing and where. Before we look at electric melting, let's briefly look at other fuels and options that are available to us with our conventional thinking. And one of them is obviously biofuels. However, I'd like to remind everybody that biofuel still produces CO2, and we're trying to save the planet, and therefore we should be avoiding CO2. And I don't really believe that chopping down a tree, for example, and then burning it in a furnace in about 4 minutes, and then waiting 40 years to replace that tree is really sustainable and part of what we're trying to do going forward. So it doesn't renew very quickly. There is problems with the efficiency of the fuel, the reliability, and obviously price. I want to just touch briefly on reliability. There's been in the scientific journals fairly recently, they've looked at the amount of biofuel, biodiesel currently being used in various places around the world. And it's very clear that we are burning more biodiesel than we are actually making from renewable sources. So what people believe is happening is that people are converting palm oil into biodiesel. Now, if you know anything about the production of palm oil, this is even worse for the planet because we're destroying rainforest, which is important going forward, and then making palm oil and then making it into biodiesel is plain stupid. The other obvious problems is the variability of calorific value and the availability. So by and large, I don't believe biofuels have a major part of the glass melting process going forward. Hydrogen apart from today's newspaper, up until fairly recently, everybody thinks, yeah, we can use hydrogen. We've got the burners. It's going to become available. It'll be easy. We've got pipes. We've got burners. But as my father used to say, it's not quite as easy as that. There are some major issues. We've known for some time that when you burn hydrogen in a glass furnace, that you get more foam on the surface. If we get more foam on the surface, we have problems getting the heat through that foam into the melt. We also know that the product of combustion is water, and adding the water to the glass also affects the ability to fine it. The other problem with burning hydrogen and producing is that we're producing superheated steam at something like 2400 degrees Celsius. And currently we don't have many refractories that can withstand that kind of environment. And then we've got the investment cost. Some of you may well know that Pilkington did a trial with hydrogen. They used all of the hydrogen that was available in the UK. They had to have deliveries every 20 minutes. But the amount of investment they had in the safety requirements was horrendous. And just in view of, to reinforce the point on safety, can I just remind everyone that when we put satellites into space, we use liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. You know, that produces a huge amount of thrust. And if they get it wrong, we've seen on many occasions the engines blow up on the takeoff point. And the other point that everybody forgets is that if we are going to use green hydrogen, it is made from green electricity. And this tells you it's going to be more expensive than the electricity we made it from. So why would we use electricity to produce hydrogen, which we then burn at only 60% efficiency, when we could put a molybdenum electrode in carrying current and get about 95% efficiency? So on a price point of view, and also on the availability, I don't think this is an option going forward either. Well, you could say, why don't we just take our exhaust gases and carbon capture it and either utilize it or store it in defunct gas mines? Well, Glass Futures, and I'll touch on this organisation later, looked at more than 30 different systems that are currently at 1 degree or other of transfer readiness level. Basically, there were 7 technology families. There's only one that was an option so far, and it was tried in both Pilkington and was then going to be transferred to Glass Futures. Unfortunately, the company went bankrupt, so it won't be going to Glass Futures after all. One of the problems with the emissions from the glass melting furnace is that we have a lot of contamination with it. We have some volatile components, sodium sulfate, we have some dust, particularly soda ash, maybe some fine sand. And so any of the carbon capture systems in those 7 families generally need a lot more cleaning up of the exhaust gas before it can be carbon captured and utilised. There is only one possibility that has arisen in the last couple of years, and I think this is a really good option. This is the hot potassium system, and it's currently going to be installed in 2026 in a float glass line in America. And this company will sell you a system that will carbon capture, and you can then either sell the carbon dioxide yourself, or they'll buy it off you and they'll get ready for you and it is food grade, I understand. So this is, I think, something very exciting and something which will grow in as it gets understood better. Okay, so generally the consensus in the industry is that this is the only way forward. But it's not currently as we know it. As I said earlier, existing melting with a flame is in fact horizontal melting, whereas a cold top electric melting is a vertical melting process with the three layers sitting on top of each other. But there is a new baby on the block, and that is the hybrid melter. Before we look at hybrid melters and the future, let's just look at the different types of electric furnaces. We can have cold top, which I've already discussed, which is a batch blanket on the surface, trapping in the heat. You can have a hot top where you might have some flame on the top or some other heating system and a superstructure where we're running at something very similar to temperatures that we run currently in our conventional furnaces. In fact, the hot top generally runs about 100 degrees lower than a conventional furnace. Or we can have a semi-hot top where we have a mixture of batch blanket and foam, and the hot top is heated to anywhere between 12 and 1400. And this is particularly good for reduced glasses. In terms of the geometry, the furnace can be square, it can be rectangular, hexagonal, duodecagonal, could be round, or it could be a shelf type. The transformers are generally three-phase, but you can have two-phase. Now, two-phase Scott squares is a very unusual furnace transformer. We take three phases in, and because of the way the transformer is wound, when we take two phases out of that, it's perfectly balanced. Normally in a three-phase transformer, if you had three phase in and only took two out, it would be very unbalanced on either the primary or the secondary. But the Scott is perfectly balanced on both, and it has many, many advantages, and that's particularly why FIC uses it a lot. Or we can have single phase. And then with electrodes, you can have top electrodes, you can have sidewall, you can have shelf electrodes, and you'll see a picture of a shelf furnace in a minute, bottom electrodes or plate electrodes. I'm not going to go into any detail about those ones, other than to say the best one of all is bottom electrodes. And then I can give you another presentation alone on why that's better than the others. But not time for that today. So here we have some pictures of furnaces. The bottom left is a shelf type. The top is a Scott square furnace with a two-phase. The middle drawing one is a Tico type 1 with Scott squares. The bottom right is another shelf type, and the top right is a hexagonal. There's a few more here. This one top left is a mixture of sidewall and top electrodes. The one top right is again hexagonal, and then the bottom one you can see plate electrodes. And again, I won't go into detail about the advantages of that. So here is a picture of a cold top electric furnace. It's hexagonal. You can see the batch charger putting layers of batch into the furnace to seal the surface. Here's perhaps a better picture of another cold top furnace. You can see a couple of little volcanoes here and here, where typically we get some evolution of the gas. We try to avoid that as wherever possible. Okay, well, it might surprise you to know that there are more than 500 electric furnaces in the world. Most of them in the range of between 1 to 25 or between 25 and 100. There's at least 50 operating between 100 and 200. And we and our original mother company, Glass Service, which is also part of CEFPRO, that also is possible to, we found by modelling, to do 600 to 1,000 tonnes a day. So electricity looks good, but is it? Because the big problem we have everywhere in the world is that electricity is generally the most expensive fuel. And that's because generally the cost of electricity is still linked to the cost of when we produce it by gas. We have a lot of renewable energy, solar and wind around the world, and that electricity cost is currently considerably less than that generated by natural gas. But governments are not letting us have that. So that's what's holding back electricity. The other problem is, again, and this applies all over the world, we don't have enough generating capacity. And the other problem we have, even if we had the generating capacity, we don't have the reticulation systems, the grids, to deliver it to where the customers want it. So I'm conscious of time. This is the format we would go to get to electric melting. Hybrid melter is in fact a horizontal electric melter, has almost identical footprint to existing furnaces and unlimited tonnages and a shorter lifespan. We've proved that it's doable. The 3.6 is the plateau we've reached currently with fuel efficiency. We know that a hybrid can do 2.7 if it's a container or 2.9 for floats. Here, 80% of the total energy is from in-glass electrodes. The remaining 20% is top heat, could be electric, hydrogen or biofuels. But the top heat is over the refining layer, not the batch plant. Here is one that we first presented in 2017. All our competitors, all the engineering companies did the modelling in 2018 and got the same thing, so they're now all selling this. This is one that's now in operation in Germany and is working well. We have one for float. Because of time, I won't go into that. We have one for hybrid. This is the base modelling. There are already hybrids in the world, one in Pyrex and one in India. The Pyrex one is 70% electric, the rest oxygas, and this year they're hoping to go to 80% with slight alterations. So here's a picture of theirs. These will be available for people to look at. So the glass futures is coming together of the industry. It's good. It's doing a lot of good things, but I question it here about what we really want as the industry. We need to push the envelope to something that no one's got the courage to do. So I'm a great fan of glass futures, but the industry together needs to decide what crazy idea we want to try next. So this is why change is necessary. It's the survival of the planet and the survival of our industry. So I think the future is bright. I believe the future is electric. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Stuart, for your presentation. I do have questions, but I'll open the floor first to our attendees, and whoever wants to ask a question, you can just unmute yourself, or if you prefer, you can write in the chat. So maybe while people are thinking about possible questions, I do have a curiosity about you trying amber glass in an electric furnace, and how did it go? Because we did the same experiment but for very small amounts and it worked perfectly. But if you can talk a little bit about your experience of melting amber glass in an electric furnace, I would love to hear about it.
it is problematic. The biggest problem is transitioning from oxidized to reduced. I took a lot of advice from all sorts of smart people around the world, thought we knew what we were doing. To cut a very long story short, it took me more than 20 days initially. I didn't think we would do it, but we did. When we realized how the mistake we made, next time we did it, it took us 5 days, which is 2 days longer than it would on a conventional furnace. And the next time we did it, it was only 3.5 days, which was only half a day longer than normal. So, yeah, basically, you've got to take the sodium sulfate out before you transition all electrically.
And do you have in mind the quantity of glass you were melting?
Yeah, I had 2 furnaces. One was 30 tons a day. The other one was 60 tons a day. So, they were industrial furnaces making a lot of glass for export, tableware and flaconnage and pharmaceutical.
Okay, so we do have a very small electric furnace for our experiments, and we managed to, after many trials, to melt amber glass in the electric furnace. But the important thing was to reduce the melting more than the atmosphere, so we understood we needed...
It's not just a question, it's a sulfur solubility that's the biggest issue. So the oxidizing agents are less of an issue, but getting sodium sulfate out from the base glass, we found was a key to it.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we have a comment here. So from Lisa Holland, she's commenting that she's interested in reducing in an electric furnace, but her melts are typically around 300 grams. So it's more or less what we are doing. We are even doing less at Vicart. We started with 60 grams. So it's a tiny, I can imagine for you, it's like a nanoscale. But yeah, it's the melting and the batch that is important. So David Moore is asking which countries are making the best progress in terms of electric melting.
Europe is, because we have legal requirements in the EU to reduce CO2. So there's a big move there, but also China. Everybody thinks that China is the biggest polluter, but it really isn't. They have said that by 2030, they will have the maximum CO2 emissions, and after that, it will only reduce. And they already are putting tariffs, or, a tax on the CO2 from the steel and the iron industry, and the glass industry has been told they are next. So I have seen a big upturn in China recently, with increase in interest in electric furnaces and also using more boost and super boost in preparation for that. So I would put Europe first, followed closely by China. But I just want to say again, the biggest growth rate in the world of anywhere is India. India hasn't really started to tackle CO2 yet, but I think seeing what's happening in China, they might be the next ones to start moving.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm just checking. I don't know if anyone has any questions to Stuart. I think it was an incredible presentation. Thank you so much for bringing us this furnace world. From my side, I just want to thank again so much your participation. And before we finish, I really want to share with you very quickly our final slide. Sorry, just needs, now it's me who is trying to reach my PowerPoint, and it's here.